All right, as you guys know, we've been buying vehicles from all over the place. And if you haven't seen any of those episodes, we fix up old clunkers and turn them into daily drivers. And our latest adventure was to Africa. And we bought 2 Land Rovers in South Africa, toured them through Africa, and now we are importing them into North America, Canada specifically. And this video is all about what you need to know to import these beautiful rust-free rare vehicles from Africa. Here we go. Okay, so right off the bat, how much does it cost? Quite a bit, actually. Probably going to be cheaper if you're able to buy 2 vehicles and stick them in a 40-foot container. For us, that was $10,600 US. Now, if you were to just do 1 vehicle in a 20-foot container, it likely wouldn't be half of that because it's still a lot of paperwork, and that is partly what you're paying for, not just the shipping component of it. Okay, so United States is not allowed to import any vehicle newer than 25 years that's not built specifically for the American market. Whereas Canada can import 15 years and older, so we get a 10-year head start on the American market. We did this on 2 Land Rovers, and it all goes back to doing your homework, making sure that it's worth bringing them in. So we did it twofold. We turned it into a vacation, kind of a work vacation, whereas some people would pay a lot of money to do the excursions that we did. And we turned that into a holiday and then used that experience to import the vehicles into Canada, where we'll try and sell them at a profit. Now, these Land Rovers are rare in Canada and in North America as a whole, so their value is roughly, I would say, 3 to 4 times what we paid for it in South Africa. All right, so first you need a vehicle, and that gets pretty challenging because it is on the other side of the world. It is a 22-hour flight to get to where we had to be. That's with a couple stopovers. So it's not like you can go and inspect it and see what you're getting. So what we did was we actually had a friend of Aaron's that lived in South Africa. We threw him a couple Facebook Marketplace listings that was close to where he lived, and he found somebody that knew a little bit about the Defenders and problematic rust spots and looked at those Defenders for us. So the first one, 99, that we called Yoda, they went and looked at it, verified that the truck actually exists, that the person is a real person, that we have a phone number that we can call and talk to, and they went and looked at it. The second one we bought off a dealership, and we got our friend Neil to go to the dealership and verify that the dealership was legit, that the truck was actually there, that the VIN numbers matched. He was able to take pictures of everything underneath as well. Now, Neil is not a mechanic, and as you guys know in the video, the black one that we bought from the dealership was not very reliable. But it didn't matter, because even if I had to push that truck into a container, it would still be worth it because there was no rust. And that's all the pictures that I wanted from him, that mechanically we can fix that on a very reasonable budget. When you have to tear this vehicle apart and start replacing parts, you're getting into a massive project, and that's not what any of us want. We want vehicles that we're able to drive home. So if you don't have a friend, you need to find somebody who can third-party kind of verify that yes, the vehicle is there, yes, it is what they say it is, with some degree of confidence, say, get it, or this looks fishy, or I'm getting a good feeling from this person, or I'm getting a bad feeling from this person. All right, so now the tricky part stuff happens, because you have a vehicle that you want, and you want to either go there and drive it for a bit, or you want to export it from Africa and import it into either Canada or the US. So if you're a citizen of South Africa, it's relatively easy to put a vehicle in your name. If you're a foreigner, you need a special permit to have a vehicle in your name. The issue is that it takes 4 to 6 weeks of filing this in person before you can legally do it. This makes it very difficult for us to drive the vehicles. We need to have somebody else own the vehicles. Now you're buying a vehicle and putting it in somebody else's name, and there's no way around this. You cannot export a vehicle even if it's in your name in South Africa unless you have an exporter license. This is where African Overlander came in super helpful. Now, he was recommended by multiple different Facebook forums with lots of success stories saying that he's shipped their vehicles all over the world. A lot to Europe, Australia, and North America. Now, with Duncan being recommended as a trustworthy person, we felt comfortable putting the trucks in his name. Still kind of a gamble because we couldn't insure the vehicles, and then he in turn had to give us a piece of paper saying that it was okay for us to drive his vehicles as we did our overlanding tour through Africa, Namibia, and Botswana. So you're probably thinking, nah, I am never doing that. Now here's the thing, we've bought vehicles in the United States at smaller amounts, but we've sent the full amount without ever seeing the vehicle. But I talked to the person on the phone. Every vehicle that we've purchased in the States, we've paid for ahead of time, and we are still good friends with all of them. It's been a great relationship that way, and hopefully that continues with Duncan as well. We get a good feeling when even with the time zone, we call, he picks up the phone, he answers any questions that we have, and trust me, Ian has a lot of questions for Duncan. And if Duncan, you're watching this video, I apologize. So at this point, I want to say, Ian, thank you for all of your hard work that you've done to make this trip a success as well. We could not have done it without you, buddy. All right, so now the vehicle is in somebody's name that you trust, and you want to drive it. Well, before you're allowed to drive it, it has to be deemed as roadworthy, a government inspection, as you would say. This is done by whoever plans to transfer the title, even if you don't plan to drive it in South Africa like we did. It involves getting the paperwork to the Ministry of Transportation in South Africa. Now, it's important to know that they cannot transfer anything or approve anything if there's a lien against the vehicle. So if there's any money owing on the vehicle, that has to be paid off before all the paperwork can be completed. So we had Neil do this on the 99 Defender we called Yoda. He had to take it to a government inspection site. They tell him everything that's wrong. He has to take it to a different mechanic to fix all the problems, then bring it back, verify that all that work has been done, and now it's deemed as a safe, reliable vehicle. When we bought it off of Last Auto, they brought it to a government site, they did all of the work, then brought it back again. This is what was supposed to happen, but it was not actually the case. When we sent Neil over to inspect the vehicles, he was told that the vehicles were gone through, that everything was good, and the safety was taken care of, but that was an outright lie. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of issues with Barbie and lots of things that would not have passed the government inspection, so they did something fishy there. So insurance is a little different. You can get insurance on a vehicle, and if you had a nice vehicle in South Africa, you might want to go that route, but it's not actually required. There's actually very few vehicles that are fully insured in Africa, and Duncan didn't require it, neither did Neil. They were just able to drive it. It's basically bump into somebody, well, it's cheaper to fix it, and I'll get to it when I get there. But you have the vehicles, all the paperwork's in order, now it's time to send money. They do not take e-transfers, visas, or direct deposit. The only way to send money is to wire it. Now, if you wire it, it is gone. That money is not coming back. So all the previous steps that we said before, I highly recommend you absolutely guarantee that are done properly and accurately. We had the luxury of sending somebody to these dealerships and these private people to buy the vehicles. If you don't have that, I would be extremely cautious with sending money. You can verify addresses, you can do Google Street Views, you can do reviews, you can ask questions on forums as to whether these are legit people or not. But once that money is sent, it is gone. So it is buyer beware. We sent little bits first just to make sure that there's no issues with the wire transfer. It takes a few days to get it. We were actually kind of stalling a little bit too while we were saving up money to pay the full amount. But basically just, did you get that amount? Okay, then we'll send more. And everybody was happy at the end. We paid the full amount and there was no issues with the wire transfers. Now, I've said before that I did not do any of this paperwork, and I would love to be able to make it look like I'm smart enough to tell you exactly what it is. but I'm going to read off of you exactly what the exporter has to do if you're interested in this at all, and for you guys to even appreciate what the guys went through to get these Defenders home. Like I said, the vehicles have to go and get inspected by the police, make sure that there's no drugs or crimes were committed with it, that they are legit vehicles, the VINs match, and there's a cost with that. ITAC is a process of identifying the chassis and engine to make sure that they are not tampered with before the export. So this is really neat. They spray the engine and the chassis with a microscopic plastic disc powder that marks both with identification. And this is a must and will be taken care of by your exporter. If that coating is disturbed, it's kind of a black light as I understand it, some sort of light to see if this coating is disturbed, and if it's disturbed, they won't let you export the vehicle, meaning that, okay, the police cleared it, now I can open it up, stuck the engine full of drugs and put it back together again. You've disturbed this coating, now you cannot export the vehicle, and you're probably going to jail. Now they're ready to go into the shipping, and there's two ways of shipping them out. Inside a container, which is what we did, or roll on, roll off. Now we went with container because we know that they are stuck inside a container, away from the elements of the salt water on the ship, and you know that they're not being tampered with. They're not getting banged into, they're not getting driven in a way that you wouldn't, but it does end up costing about $1,000 to $2,000 more in the long run. So it's up to you. Roll on, roll off is definitely an option, and I know lots of people that do. It also makes leaving the port easier because they basically bring the vehicle to you. We had to pay a trucking company to go into the port, pick up the container, and take it off site. Something to consider, we really liked our vehicles and we like the idea of the salt water not touching them at all. I'm sure that it's not that bad in the belly of one of these massive transporters, but I have seen lots of vehicles and even heard of farm equipment brand new being on the ship, and stupid things like the salt water getting into the exhaust, getting into that exhaust valve that's open and scoring that entire cylinder. Kevin on our channel, DGHG, has rebuilt plenty of engines that had 200-300 hours on it because it's got a dead cylinder because it was full of salt water. So keep that in mind. If you've been following along with the African road trip, you know that we ended our trip around the end of August. But why did it take so long? Because now it is very close to Christmas time and we just got our vehicles 2 days ago in the beginning of December. August is Africa's winter, so it's colder there. We were originally told that it would take about 6 weeks to get the containers over, which would put it in the middle of October if all things went very well. We brought them into Halifax, and the idea was to drive the trucks from Halifax to Ontario, another 1,300 miles, something like that. And we figured nice, warm October with beautiful colors in the fall foliage, and it would be a wonderful drive. Now, there was a lot of delays that were completely out of our control. If you've watched the Africa trip, lots of things went wrong, but we were still able to stay on track and on schedule. We were actually ahead of schedule, even with about a dozen breakdowns in the middle of nowhere. But as soon as we dropped the trucks off, that's when the delays started. And that ranged from not being able to get shipping containers in South Africa, not being able to get the clearances from the police when that was getting dropped off on a timely manner. That also meant that it stayed in a port in Rotterdam for 2 or 3 weeks. There was also delays in strikes in the port in Montreal where the ship went first. And then there was weather. Our trucks were sitting on the dock and we couldn't grab them because there was weather delays. So all of that was out of our control, and that was actually pretty frustrating. We had tracking with our ship and we were able to track exactly when that ship was going to show up. We had an estimated date and we booked our flights a week before the ship landed. Anywhere closer and the flight started going up. So now we flew out hoping to still catch that window, but we ended up spending a couple days in Halifax with nothing really to do. So if you are not getting the vehicles delivered to your home residence or somewhere close by within driving, I recommend you don't book your flights until your ship has docked. Okay, so why did we avoid Montreal? There's a little touchy subject here, and hopefully this doesn't bite me in the butt later, but we've heard that the Montreal port is not very honest. If you guys have been up on the crime rate on all the stolen vehicles in the major cities, it is a very well-known fact that they leave the port in Montreal. Now, that is not just one person smuggling or a team smuggling, that is everybody involved inside that circle. We've also had friends of ours have Land Rovers delivered to Montreal and then get a phone call and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, there's a lot of dirt on your Land Rover and we need to clean that off." And what that means is you're paying to pressure wash it, they collect that dirt and they ship that back to Africa. And that's for disease control. That bill ended up being just over $8,000 for one vehicle. And when they got the vehicle back, they did not even wash it. There was still dirt on the vehicle. And we're not talking dirt. We're talking about some dust on the side of the vehicle, on the bottom, maybe a little bit on the tires as they were rolling it in the sea container. But that is frustrating because you spent all this time and energy on this vehicle. They know you're going to pay it, and that is crooked. We brought it to Halifax because that was one more road trip that we could do from the eastern side of Canada, see the beautiful country. And now that we saw it in the winter with the beautiful snow, it is just as pretty as it was with the fall colors. I'm 100% positive that it was a beautiful drive so far. Okay, so again, I am not smart enough to know all this and remember this because I'm extremely tired right now too. But below is a list of the documents that you'll need to import, and your importer will be aware of all the documents and will request them from you about a month before the ship arrives in port. Note that the vehicle will be in your exporter's name at the moment of loading the container and still in their name when it lands. They'll need the ownership, the title, registration of the vehicle, the bill of sale, the exporting clearance documents, which is the ITAC police clearance, bill of lading, and documentation provided by the shipping company to the exporter once the containers are loaded on the ship. The power of attorney requested by your importer to allow them to act on your behalf with customs and etc. And the importer will basically take care of all the paperwork and bill you a total amount for their services. Below are the required costs and paperwork you will need about 3 weeks before the containers make port. So you have to pay the duty, 5% GST in Canada, the air conditioning charge, the RIV, which is the registration of imported vehicles, clearance and handling, local terminal fees, and all of this takes place about 3 weeks before arrival, and you need to pay your importer then. You're probably thinking, well, I am lost, I'm not gonna do all that. But that's where you hire a broker. A broker works with exporters like Duncan all the time. They talk to each other. They'll send you emails once in a while saying, hey, I need the bill of sale. Hey, I need this documentation from you. Hey, I need money. And you give them the money and you give them the bill of sale and the paperwork that they ask. They talk to each other, and because they do it all the time, it is worth that cost. And that is what makes this thing the least amount of stress that it can be when professionals are doing the job that you're paying them to do. So we used Priority, and they were fantastic, always answering emails. As far as I know, Duncan was happy with them as well. At the end of it, we ended up with our vehicles in our hands. We worked directly with the trucker. Priority emailed and called us saying, Customs has cleared your vehicles, all the paperwork is complete. Here is the paperwork. We were able to forward that over to the trucking company, and they were able to go to the port, grab the proper container, and bring it to their warehouse where they in turn unloaded the container. So the company we used was IH Mathers. They were about 5 minutes from the port. This is what they do all day, every day, is grab these types of containers and unload them and store them. And they were absolutely fantastic to work with. During the weather delay, they called us right away. They said, unfortunately, the port's closed. Next day, they were giving us pictures of the lineup, but explaining the delays. Definitely got us our container on time, so we got it right before the weekend, so we didn't have to stay another additional few days before we were able to get the container. So big shout out to them. Give them a call, and I highly recommend them. All right, so if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know that I'm the guy in front of the camera and I do all the work. Now, we have a great team, and there's about 5 of us that were involved in this specific project. And we all had our talents. My talents is to find a vehicle, get the parts that are needed for it, make sure that we have the tools to repair these vehicles, and that we arrive from point A to point B in a safe manner. Now, the hard work is actually Aaron, who is trying to navigate himself through all of this paperwork. So Aaron's going to show you exactly how to get your imported vehicle on the road and drive it legally.
All right, so we just got registration for the Land Rovers in Canada, so we can drive them home from Halifax, and I'm just going to tell you everything you need. First of all, it's not called a temporary registration. We've been calling it that, and everybody's been super confused. It is called an in-transit permit, point A to B. Basically, you just tell them where you're starting from and where you're ending. $26 for both of them. So I haven't paid my provincial taxes yet. You just need to prove that you've paid the federal taxes by giving them, in our case, our broker handled all of this. We gave them the declarations document from our broker. The arrival documents that we got from the port helps, but that only proves who's the seller is. You have a bill of sale that's going to validate that. They don't really need it, so you can do this before your truck arrives. That's awesome. I wish I knew that back in Ontario. That would have just made things a little simpler, because we thought somebody needed to be here and fly ahead of time and get them out of the port, and then somebody had to pay Service Ontario to handle all of this. I brought all of my original documents, brought my bill of sale, my title, and insurance, proof of insurance. Yeah, a temporary permit, which is what we were calling it, that's a 30-day thing. You need to have a safety done for that. For this, you do not need a safety. They know that. They're going to tell you that the vehicle needs to be completely empty. You're limited to 5,000 kgs. Everything else, legit. Sticker in the window. They tell you to take your plates off. We're not going to do that either. So, here we go.
So, is it worth it? Well, we can't 100% tell you if it's financially worth it. There was a lot of time and energy that went into this. The original idea for this was to buy two and sell one to try and flip it and make enough money to cover the cost of the vacation. If you were to do a safari in Africa, you cannot do just a 10 or a 20-day safari. The minimum that we were told was months. And what happens is you go there and you rent a vehicle and you leisurely take your time to tour what we did in 3 weeks. But that rental is not cheap. Those generally go between $10,000 and $17,000. What you get when you get to South Africa, those vehicles cost about $25,000 to $28,000 brand new. So basically these companies are renting this vehicle out twice, paying for the vehicle, and then anything on top of that is a plus. But they can't have these vehicles leaving their customers stranded. That becomes a very uncomfortable vacation for most people. Not us. We had a great time. We were able to do this excursion for very, very little money. The fuel is very inexpensive there. The accommodations are super cheap. The food is cheap and fantastic. So we were able to cut that cost way down if you count the cost of doing the excursions that we did, seeing the animals that we did. On top of that, we end up with the vehicles. So with selling the vehicles, we're not sure yet if we're going to come out financially on top. But the memories that we made with the team that we had is undeniably one of the best experiences that I've ever had in my life. So not only did we grow as the team in Africa and we're able to work together and function and make memories that will last a lifetime, we're now making memories in Canada doing the last leg of the trip. My father's on the trip now. As Brad wasn't able to come, I get to spend time with him and make memories with him. So it's impossible to put a price on that. And I always said, if you're buying a vehicle, why are you getting a ship? Vehicles are meant to be driven as long as you're mentally prepared and have some sort of plan ahead of time, meaning have the right tools, be safe, have the right parts, get the vehicle inspected, take a good look at it before you go out so you can see the obvious fails and then try to fix the unexpected oopses along the way. So is it worth it for me right now without having sold one or both of the Defenders? Absolutely. I would pay more to do the exact same trip again. So are you going to go to Africa and get a vehicle? This video hopefully did show you exactly what you need to do that. But like I've said before, if it's not Africa, make sure it's somewhere else. And I'm not even talking about overseas or exotic places. Do it outside of your state or your province or your country, Mexico, US, Canada. Get out of your comfort zone, call a couple buddies, do it now while you have the chance, before you get married, before you have a mortgage and kids and whatever else and obligations. Now's the time, looking at you younger guys specifically, to go get a nice rust-free vehicle that you can now build into something your own and is not too far gone in the rust belt that you now have to get rid of it. Thanks for watching, guys. Any comments, anything I got wrong, say it down below. Experiences that you guys have if you've bought vehicles and you've road tripped them, whether domestically or from a foreign country, definitely share some of your experiences down below. I love hearing it, and everybody else needs to see that it is not impossible and that they should absolutely do this. Thanks for watching, guys. Here we go.